Hello again, Roy.RealEstate here with Coldwell Banker Legacy in San Angelo. Today I want to talk a little bit about property taxes from a political point of view. So right now, as I'm recording this, at least the legislative session in Texas is active. Texas is fascinating because we only have our legislators in session 140 days every other year. So they don't have a lot of time to get done things they want to get done, which is a good and a bad thing. Sometimes there's things they need to get done and they don't run out of time, but there's very few things they really have to do, and they cause more problems than they fix. So in general, it's a good thing. But anyway, one of the issues that's been up and it's been discussed and been trying to work on is how to fix property taxes, except they say fix property taxes, but really they're not talking about fixing it. They're talking about bringing a little more transparency into the process, which is generally a good thing. But here's the issue you face, that basically a huge portion of our school funding comes from property taxes. And that's true across the state. The state, via the court system, forced Robin Hood on the state government. And then with Robin Hood, basically the state dictates to all the school districts what they charge per $100 of valuation. So the tax rate that the school district charges, the biggest portion of it, there's some that are bonds and different parts of it that the school district can actually choose, but the vast majority of it is chosen at the state level and mandated on them from that point. And the state mandates that the taxing districts, the appraisal districts, value the properties at within 10% basically of what the legitimate value of the property is. So that's one of the things that's changed in the last few years, is they've enforced that. People's property values have risen. Values that were below market value have been forced by the state to come up to market value. And so that makes people mad. If you've been below market value, you have a house that was taxed at $100,000, but it was really worth $150,000, and all of a sudden over a year or two, the taxing appraisal district brings it up from $100,000 to $150,000, you've seen a 50% increase in your taxes. The value of your house hasn't changed. So that's a pain. But on the other hand, it was, in a way, you could say, not right before. So the difficulty is, where's the money going to come from? If you're going to fund the things that are being funded in the school systems, then the money's got to come from somewhere. And the most fair way to do it is for everybody's property to be valued according to market value and taxed appropriately. So that's good in a way. The problem you get into, and that's one of the things they're trying to deal with here, is the rising markets. So, in our San Angelo market, we're seeing increases of about 5% a year in realistic property values. So that means if you own a home free and cleared, or even if you're paying, if you're paying a mortgage on it, either way, you're seeing an increase in your taxes every year of about 5%. But what if you're in Midland County and your housing values are going up at 10 or maybe 15% a year over the last several years? Or you're in Plano or some of the parts of Dallas and Austin that just seen huge growth. I mean, 10, 15, even 20%, sometimes even in smaller areas larger than that, increases. So you bought a house 10 years ago and you paid $100,000 for it, but now that house, because of what's happened in the area around you, is worth $400,000. Well, you're paying 4 times the taxes that you were when you bought the house, say 10 years ago. But you're living in the same house, and it is frustrating when you're that person. But the other side of that is it's fair because it is legitimately based on the value of the house. But in a lot of cases, it does price people out of their house. Just the taxes, the older fixed income, whatever, their taxes are rising way faster than their income is. And so it's a difficult situation. So, but there's no simple solution. And that's the problem you're going to have, is there's nothing that can be done in Austin that's going to fix the problem. And not that they're very good at fixing problems anyway, but just as a principle, the only way to do it is to change the whole funding system. And do you really want a 20% sales tax instead of the 8-ish we've got now, 8, 8.5, 8.25? Yeah, you could do that and get rid of property taxes. So then instead of you paying it on your property, you're paying it on the things you're buying every day. Well, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's the amount of money the state is taking in and spending on things that's the issue, but everybody wants them to spend more and tax less, and that's just, it's financially not possible. Washington can do it because they borrow money, but the state of Texas, because of the Constitution, can't borrow money. So honestly, there's really no way to get this fixed. Politically, it's impossible. the way things have got to be done. Our infrastructure, particularly in our area, in West Texas, and even more into the Permian Basin and stuff, has been hugely affected by the price of oil. I talked with the fracking videos recently about the number of trips by truck to these well sites. Well, if you're looking at 1,700 truck trips to a well site for a frack job, well, what does that do to the road? So that infrastructure is been affected. You know, they were treated like these roads would last for 100 years, and they really only last for 50 with this kind of traffic. So roads have to be rebuilt. I mean, these are important things that people want, and somebody has to do. Somehow roads have to be built, whether the county builds them, the city builds them, the state builds them, you know, somehow, but we have to have roads to create the modern economy that we have. And the education system has to happen somewhere, whether it's, you know, you can argue about whether it's best for the state to be doing the education and deciding on these things, or to be done more locally or privately or whatever, but either way, education in general is a good investment. So really there's not a way to fix this problem. You can move taxes from one person to another, you can shift the burden from the buyers to the landowners to whatever, but you're still ultimately need the same number of dollars to fund the school system, to keep up the infrastructure and all the other things that the state's required to do. So again, I don't foresee any solution that really will work. They've talked about capping the rates of increase, and again, the problem is that cap of the rate of increase is unfair to the person whose property isn't increasing, because they're paying full market value, and the person whose property is increasing rapidly isn't paying full market value. So in a way, that's not fair. So it's difficult to make something that's fair and brings in the amount of income that the state needs to run and do the things that they are currently doing. So the answers are, you know, change the system drastically in some form or fashion, an income tax or whatever, but that's not going to be any better. So it's a difficult proposition. Or the other answer is to cut the services that the state's providing and cut the tax rate. Let the school districts or the counties pick up more of those expenses, but then the counties and school districts are going to have to pick up the tax rate to justify that. So anyway, it's a difficult thing, because everyone else wants, again, the benefits to keep going up and the tax rates to keep going down, and it's just not financially ever going to work. So it's everybody pushes for what they want for their pet projects and things, but that they don't want their taxes to go up. And it's a battle. It's a cost benefit that each person has to weigh. You know, the taxes are going to pay for things. Whether those things are good value could be argued, but they are legitimately going to pay for education, infrastructure, other things that the state does. So the only real solution is to change what the state does, or just shift, and it's a shell game if they do. You know, if we have a 20% sales tax, well, then retailers won't, Amazon open the big warehouse here, they won't want to move to the state because they're forced to pay that, but they're paying it in property taxes anyway. And by the way, you may say, hey, I'm a renter, I don't pay property taxes. Wrong. You don't see a line item on your rent for property taxes, but your landlord is paying taxes on that property. And where do you think the landlord gets the money to pay those property taxes from? He gets it from the renters. So this affects everyone in the state of Texas. Every resident pays property tax, and ultimately every buyer of a product or service pays property tax, because that business is paying property tax. So there's no fresh source of money. It's just a matter of how the money is taxed, what areas do you take it from, and then what things do you spend it on, and how much do you spend on it. So again, the legislature talks big about simplification and you know, shining more light on it, more transparency and all those things, but there's really not going to be a simple solution to the problem. So that's my thoughts. Roy.RealEstate, 325-268-0775. Thank you.